My name is Lucas Gilman. I'm an adventure photographer and filmmaker based in Pismo Beach, California, originally from Colorado. But I shoot all kinds of things. I work for car companies. But I wanted to start off showing what my office looks like. So this will give you an idea. So some pretty cool stuff that you can do with your DSLR cameras these days. Like I said, I grew up in Colorado. The first advice I give to anybody looking to become a better photographer, or if you're just getting into photography, is photograph what you know. I grew up in Colorado, so I photographed what I knew, and that was skiing and outdoor sports. And it was one of those things where I was out doing these things, and it's you know, as a photographer, you know, it's our job to go out and capture what we see in front of us. So I was capturing skiing, backcountry skiing, and just going out and sort of building a portfolio. And for anybody who wants to make interesting pictures, the first advice I would give you is to go out when the weather is bad. And it sounds counterintuitive, but when the weather is bad, the pictures, they will be interesting. There'll be less people, and just a splash of color in a monochromatic scene like this makes for something really different. So not only will there be less people, you know, look for that lone umbrella, you know, out on a dreary day. But I also use a lot of technique in my photography. This image was taken with a Nikon D3 right after it came out. And this image would not have been possible when film cameras were out and about. This is right about the time when people were saying, well, digital is not good enough, and you know, film's the way to go. And this image, technically, would not have been possible. How do I say that? Well, the starburst here you see in the middle, if you want to get that nice starburst, that's an f/16, a very small aperture. Very small aperture, very little light. So I also need a very fast shutter speed to freeze the skier going off of the cliff. So I'm at ISO 5000 at 25/100th of a second at f/16. So that would not have been possible on film because we would have been, you know, ISO 5000 film would not have worked. So going out, learning the technology, learning how your cameras work. But it didn't snow year-round in Colorado, so I had to have a second season. So I picked up a second season. And this doesn't have to be sports related for anybody, but you know, find something else you like to photograph. Find two things that you become really good at. For me, that was kayaking. I fell in love with the sport, and I went out and started, you know, shooting kayaking. And I was very lucky because I fell in with some of the best kayakers in the world. This is Rolf Ortiz. This is the second largest waterfall ever run, 132 feet. He did walk away from this. kind of crazy stuff. But, you know, it was one of those things. I'd found my second season, and I just went out again and started shooting pictures, making unique images, you know, using simple things such as rule of thirds. You notice how he's on the third side of the frame, 1/3 of the frame. Putting those people in interesting positions and just going out and hopefully finding a little luck and just working through that process as a photographer. This is my first Men's Journal article. This is the first descent of the Rio Alsaceca, Veracruz, Mexico. This is the first descent of Abaca Falls, Abaca, Oregon. And then certain things just happen. They fall in front of you. This is all natural, 100% out of the camera, no Photoshop. These are actually naturally occurring soap bubbles, which happen when leaves fall in the water. They have fatty acids in them, and they break down, and they bubble up. I'm on a bridge, and we are finishing up this shoot, and this is one of those little tips. Never put your camera away, even when the shoot's done. Walking back to the car, and we'd been shooting some waterfalls upstream, and I see him. He's going to go under the bridge below me, and this is one of those serendipitous moments where everything works out. So being ready, taking a couple test shots. You know, you see it coming, you go, okay, what do I do, right? Take one test shot, exposure's good, focus good, boom. And now we can focus on framing it and making a really nice image. I was also lucky enough to photograph the largest waterfall ever run in the world. This is Palouse Falls in Washington State. And Ralph Ortiz again, crazy guy. This is 189 feet tall. And I know it's a big theater, but that's also a very small kayak on a very large waterfall. During this day, it was a shoot for Red Bull. We had a Cineflex helicopter, a bunch of other stuff. I looked over this waterfall, and I was like, you are going to die. He's like, oh, geez. And he's like, no, I'm good, I'm good. I shot this with a D4, and at 11 frames a second, I literally got 3 frames because he was engulfed by the water. And he goes under and he pops up after about 3 minutes, and I asked him, what was it like going off a 189-foot waterfall? And he said, well, it was kind of like being in a washing machine, and then roll it down a hill. So luckily he walked away, and everybody was unscathed. Typically I use a lot of equipment in my photography and video making. This is a typical sort of kit that I would take to go out for a photo shoot. You know, D810, D4S, a lot of grip gear, SSDs, you know, lots of CF cards, you know, 24 to 70, 70 to 200, 300 millimeter 2.8, 51.4, you know, blah, 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 lots of stuff. But a lot of times I like to also have a vacation. And this is where I rely on small cameras. People say, well, why don't I use a cell phone? I have a cell phone with me. Cell phone takes great pictures, but the ability to shoot raw, to have a zoom lens, and to be able to control things is very important to me. So I use a lot of small, compact cameras to do that. And all these pictures in this next section are taken with small, compact cameras. This image, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, if you want to take reflection images, you want to take those beautiful mirror reflections, first thing in the morning, right after sunrise, is the best time to do that. It's the same reason that they row in the morning. That's the time of day when there's the least amount of wind. Also use a lot of off-camera strobes. This is a cool Pix-A with one SB910 fired off the side. My brother, Costa Rica, and Manuel Antonio. Custom Kelvin, 10,000 Kelvin. If you want to make those really, really bright red sunsets, 10,000 Kelvin, and you know, I'll be answering questions after, and we'll be out in the hall as well after that as well if you have more questions. But just going out and doing techniques. Light painting. Love to do light painting. You don't have to have a DSLR to do it. You can do it with a compact camera as long as you have manual settings. Pretty simple. Put the compact camera on a tripod. This is a P7700 here. ISO 2500 to 3000. F4. 15-second exposure. Use the self-timer to trigger it so you don't shake the camera. Trigger it, it opens up. Use a spotlight that you can get at Pep Boys or on Amazon, or B&H has spotlights as well, I'm sure. But light it up, and if it doesn't work, just keep working through the process. And you're going to keep hearing me say that time after time. Working through that process will allow you to make good images. A lot of times I like to give myself an assignment. Even when I don't have an assignment, I will go out and I will say, I need to walk away with 2 good pictures from this shoot, or I need to walk away with 3 good pictures. I want them to be a package. And for me, a lot of times that goes into shooting details, having a macro lens or using the macro setting on a compact camera, the little green, looks like a little green flower on typically most cameras. Shooting a detail, but also shooting that overall scene setter. This is shot right after sunrise. You'll see people ask me, why are the colors so good in your images? And for me, it's about shooting at the good times of the day. What are the good times? Right after sunrise, right before sunset. If you want to improve your images in an immense way, shoot at the proper times of day. During the middle of the day, have a nice lunch, relax. But in the morning, get up early. And when I say early, sunrise is not at sunrise, it's before sunrise. And then the third picture, another little detail to round that out. So again, these are all with compact cameras. AW110, a buddy of mine is a surfer. I just said, hey, can you paddle over the top of me? You know, just cruising around California, Pfeiffer Beach in Big Sur. Was totally lucky. This is happenstance. I did not plan that the sun would be going through the keyhole. But typically I do a lot of research, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. When it's gray, shoot monochromatic. It just lends itself to that. So if it's a dreary day, think black and white. Think textures. Think leading lines and such. This is an image from Mexico. I did a little campaign for the Nikon AW110, and it was one of those days where everything was going just absolutely swimmingly. Beautiful water. We're in this agua azul, and I'm taking these pictures. And I take this picture and I turn around, and there's 20 dudes with machetes behind me, and they're not happy to see me. But I'd done my research, and I knew that there were some rebels in the area called Zapatistas. Zapatistas are not fans of Americans because in the 80s, the US government tried to help the Mexican government basically eradicate them. So they saw me, they were not happy, and they start yelling at me, Estados Unidos, Estados Unidos. And I'm like, soy de Canada, soy de Canada. They're like, what? And so anyway, they're like, oh, $10,000. We want, $10,000, but otherwise, shh. They kept doing that. I'm like, yikes, they have big machetes. And, we go through this whole process. I started out with $300. Finally, I gave them $1,000. That's all the cash I had. And was lucky enough to walk away with all my fingers and toes intact. And the ironic thing is I paid them in US dollars. So I don't know if they're up on their currency, but, it all worked out. Currently live in California and shoot a lot of surfing, but a lot of travel stuff as well. Everybody have an iPhone here, Android device pretty much? Yeah, raise the hands. Yeah, most everybody. I do a lot of research. iPhone's great. I don't necessarily use it to take pictures, but doing the research. I use a program called Photobrisco. There's also a program called Sunseeker. And these are apps which I use to make my photography better. Photobrisco is basically Google Earth, which you can use Google Earth as well. But you put in your GPS location where you are, and it shows you all the pictures on Panoramio/Google Earth that have been taken all around you. Saves you hours of scouting. You want that specific angle on the Eiffel Tower? It'll show you exactly where that picture was taken. Is it cheating? No, it's advanced scouting is what I call it. The other thing is Sunseeker, and there's lots of different names for this, but it basically will tell you at any time of the day what angle the sun will be. So if you want that perfect picture, you're in Venice, and you want the sun raking across the canals with the gondolas and everything, it'll tell you the proper time of day to go do that. So by educating yourself, you will be a better photographer and you will make better pictures. But as you can see, just cruising around, making images, 15-second exposure, Coolpix P7700, using Sunseeker in Venice, love the light in Venice, Chicago Airport, just making images, having that camera available and having a good camera that has good optics and shoots raw so you can be able to do what you want, putting cameras in unique places, and again, going back and giving myself an assignment. So it was a totally gray day in California, Big Sur. It was drizzling, but I still wanted to walk away with something. So what do? I said, okay, I'm going to give myself 300 feet. I'm going to make 3 or 4 pictures in 300 feet. So what do I do first? I start looking for macro shots. I find this beautiful lily, and then I go down to the beach, just down the way, shoot this picture. Texture's kind of working. Where do I go from there? More texture. Okay, well, I've got some pretty cool texture shots. They're all tight. Now let's go for a scenic or a scene setter. 15 seconds on a tripod gives you this very milky look. A lot of the point-and-shoot cameras will accept ND filters. I always carry a 10-stop neutral density filter with me. This allows you to get that very long exposure for the water. And then, why not shoot a panoramic to set the whole scene? So as you can see, within 300 feet, we had a pretty good shoot. And this is when on a very, very gray and not perfect day, in a sense. But as I said, I moved to California from Colorado, and I shoot a lot of surfing. And it's one of those things where it's a lot of action. I'm looking for peak action. But I shoot sports in two different ways. I either shoot them with a very, very, very fast shutter speed. When I say fast shutter speed, I mean 1/3000th of a second or faster. Or a very slow shutter speed, 15 seconds. So if you go to those extremes, you'll make very interesting images. Hawaii, back to Big Sur. This is actually shot on an incorrect white balance. When I say incorrect, it was set on a white balance that was not supposed to be. I set this on fluorescent white balance to give this extra red, because what does fluorescent do? It adds extra red into the image because it thinks you're under green fluorescent light, so it evens out the green. And then I had a strobe, one SB910 off camera. I put a green gel on it because I want to cancel out that color correct light. And I lit him so he's the proper temperature. So all of a sudden, this pretty good sunset goes to a very good sunset. Getting up early, right after sunrise. Sometimes you get lucky. This is in Brazil. Iceland. Another gray day in Iceland. And back to sunset. You can see, I don't have a lot of high noon pictures in my portfolio. And again, back to sunset. People ask me, well, what's your style of photography? I'd say it's big landscape, little person. I look for those beautiful landscapes, and I hope to have one person in there for a point of reference. And after the sun goes down, get yourself a good tripod. Have some fun. Light painting, add a little flash, put it in a tent, or an LED in the tent. You know, it's amazing what you can do with the cameras these days. And you know, a lot of this came from the film days. I started shooting black and white and color film in a darkroom. And you know, it cost you all kinds of money to go out and experiment like we can do today, very inexpensively. Recently, December 20th of this last year, day after my birthday. Ironically, Mexico, when I almost got kidnapped by the Zapatistas, was the day after my birthday. I should probably stay home. But December 20th, I had the opportunity to photograph Mavericks, which is one of the largest waves in the world. Get there before sunrise again, and it's eerie. I'm going, well, where's the wave? We're at a harbor. And we get on this boat, and we go out, and the best surfers in the world are out there, and I'm going, wow, this wave's pretty big. When this wave crashes, it's like a bomb going off. You can feel the impact inside your chest. Your heart almost stops every time it goes, because they're 45 feet tall. I mean, that's like basically probably to the ceiling in here. So if you're looking up at a wall of water that big, you're probably in trouble. But I went out and was lucky enough to go out and make some really interesting images. This guy didn't have such a good day. But it was really cool to see this happen and to go out and document this, because it's you know, through all this planning and training that I was able to go out in this really inhospitable situation. So people go, well, how do I become a better photographer? This is one of the main questions I get. And it's said, well, you practice. It's like being a baseball player. The more you do it, the better you get. So going out, knowing how your camera works, knowing the settings, it will allow you to focus on the task at hand as well as what's going on in front of you. So this guy, who was the guy in the previous frame, broke 3 boards on the day. And after this frame, I shot this frame, our boat got hit by one of the waves in the back of the boat. I was on the front of the boat. And it hit the back of the boat, and the boat kicks up. And so I'm looking at the sky. I'm holding on the rail in the very front of the boat. And then it goes up and over the wave to the trough on the backside. And it throws 3 guys off the boat. And they were all right. But all the guys in the back of the boat, all their equipment was totally destroyed. My equipment was back there. My extra equipment was back there too. But it was all in Pelican cases. So by thinking ahead and being like, oh, what's going to possibly happen, keeping your gear safe, you can avoid those catastrophes. I was lucky enough to be asked by Nikon to launch the D810 camera. Pretty exciting thing to have a major camera manufacturer actually ask you to launch a camera. So they asked me, well, where would you like to go? And I said, well, Iceland. So we did a little time lapse here, and we're going to show you what the internal time lapse in the camera can do, which is really cool. Basically, you set it up, you tell it how long you want it to be, you put it on aperture priority, it does all the exposure for you, and then it builds these little clips for you, which I put together in Final Cut 10 after the fact. But you can do some really cool stuff and make these really interesting films to make your vacation photos or just to help tell stories. But Iceland's one of my favorite countries in the world. You'll see the Aurora Borealis coming up. Pretty cool stuff. But again, going out when the light's good, choosing lenses to make a statement. Wide-angle lenses. I love wide-angle lenses for landscapes. The new 20mm 1.8 is an amazing lens for landscapes. The 14-24 is great. Or just even a straight 24, even if it's an old lens, is a great landscape lens. We shot waterfalls. We shot ponies. We shot surfers. I brought a surfer and a professional surfer and a professional kayaker so that we would have talent there. And these guys were literally surfing in water that was colder than cold, I could tell you. Fun stuff. One of the things we were trying to show was that the D810, you can shoot at ISO 64. So being able to shoot ISO 64 at f/16, you could actually make some interesting long exposure images just in camera without adding any filters. I do a lot of testing every time I get a new camera or lens. I will go out and I will test how sharp is it. I always want to take something out and beat it until it breaks. Meaning beat it until it breaks, meaning figure out what it doesn't do well and what it does really well. So that when I'm in these situations, when I know it does something very well, or I know where it's probably going to have a hiccup, I can, figure that out, and whether it has a problem focusing in the dark or it doesn't. For instance, I want to see, can this thing autofocus on this guy's eye in a very dark environment? But again, going back to my roots, shooting landscapes, little person, big landscape, finding textures. I work from the background first. So when I say background first is I will actually just look at a scene and I'll say, what's the perfect scene? It's like a canvas, a blank canvas. Find the background, and from there, figure out what's going to be interesting in that. Move myself or the person to where they're in an interesting spot. As we start out in photography, a lot of times you can tell photographers that are just getting started and photographers that have been doing it a long time, because photographers that are getting started, all of a sudden there's power poles growing out of their head, there's a lamp post, there's things like that. Very simple. How to fix that? It's not Photoshop. It's by actually moving your body left or right, up or down, and actually putting that person on the background where you want them to be to make a better image. Again, using rule of thirds and things like that to make more dynamic images. And just working through that process. Lots of details, long exposures, sunrise, beautiful light there. Looking for nuances. And again, getting up before sunrise. On this day, we get out there, we get up at 4 in the morning, we're out there by 4:30. First it starts to rain, then it starts to snow, then the snow's blowing sideways, and I'm like, I just want a cup of coffee. And so I'm just sticking it out because we're already out here, right? And for 5 minutes, we get this beautiful light. 5 minutes, get this light, get this shot, and we're like, wow, this is amazing. We walk back to the car, and this is what it's like. So nothing ventured, nothing gained. Perseverance is the biggest thing in being a better photographer and making better images. We had also a professional kayaker, Joel Kowalski, amazing guy. So I did a little portrait. This is just one strobe off camera, SB910, with a D810. The D810 has a wireless commander mode, so it can fire the strobe over here. I put a full tungsten gel, the orange gel, on it, and turned the camera's white balance to the little light bulb, tungsten. So everything goes blue, but what is lit by the strobe, which is gelled orange, is lit the correct temperature. So all of a sudden you have this really interesting warm, cool combination, shot at sunset and making something different. The Glacier Lagoon, some random waterfalls that don't have a name that we found. And he said, I can only do this once. So I said, okay, I'm going to get 2 shots. So I took an 800 millimeter lens, shot all the way across the canyon to get this shot. And then I set up a camera right next to me on a tripod with a wireless transceiver that is fired when I fire the other camera, and I make this shot. So within 2 frames, or 1 drop, I've made 2 frames, which are kind of interesting. So I have something to take back to the client. I've maximized my return. We hiked through the mountains. We found really cool places. Again, it's just going out, seizing the day, and working through that adventure. From there, we went to Hawaii because the weather in Iceland, as you could see, was kind of problematic. So we jumped on a plane and went to Hawaii. And these are all shot with that 800 millimeter as well. This is a little short campaign I did with the Nikkor 20 millimeter 1.8. Great lens. And again, my process, pretty simple. And I hope everybody has a process at some point. Not that we need to rely on them all the time because we need to be creative, but what do? I get myself an athlete, I go somewhere scenic, and I start working through this process, making images, putting them in interesting spots in the frame, and just enjoying it. Photography is about fun. Going out at sunset, adding 1 strobe to add a little light back on this side because he's backlit, obviously because it's sunset. Gray day, going monochromatic again. And then trying to take it to the next level and doing something a little different. So this is steel wool. You put it in an egg beater or a whisk. And I'm going to do a little disclaimer here. Don't do this in your home. Don't do it near anything that's flammable. I don't want anybody calling me to say burn down my house. Put steel wool in an egg beater, and you can use a 9-volt battery or a lighter, and then you basically put it on a string and you spin it around, and you do a 15-second exposure, and you get these really cool sparks. So this is 15 seconds. It's like, okay, Eric, we have a flashlight. We're in the dark, so I put a flashlight on my focus. Turn off the autofocus, put it on manual. All right, camera set on manual, 15 seconds, F4. All right, boom, start spinning, 1, 2, 3, 4. And at the very end, rear curtain sync, we add 1 flash and freeze the action or him in the front. So these took literally about 30 minutes to shoot all these pictures. So 15-second exposure, camera on a tripod, rear curtain sync, a little flash at the very end to just give them some light on their face, and we made something pretty cool. Star trails, digitally, a couple applications like star stackers. It basically will put 300, 400 images together, and you'll be able to make star trails digitally. I always recommend people do passion projects. And I mean, I'm a professional photographer, and I still go out and I shoot things that people aren't paying me for. They're just something that I want to do. And a lot of times that's stuff in my backyard. That's Big Sur, California. So I'll take a buddy, a friend, a model, and we'll just go out. And we'll just start shooting. And we'll see what we get. And we go out every day. And it's all about that, getting back to your roots, enjoying what you're doing. Going out and trying new things and building that toolbox. I tell people that being a photographer is like being a plumber. You have a toolbox of things you do well, right? And the more things you can put into that toolbox, the better you're going to be. The more situations you're going to be able to succeed. Putting people in scenics, 10,000 Kelvin, again, using these camera techniques, using picture profiles built into the camera to make interesting things. Shooting a long exposure. This is a 30-second exposure. So 30 seconds for the Milky Way. He's in the dark, staying there. And I'm like, okay. And I'm going to tell you 3, 2, 1. At 3, 2, 1, hold really still. And I just had a flashlight. 3, 2, 1. I just a little light painting right on him at the very end. Boom. It took 3 frames, but we finally got one that was good. Kind of cool stuff. I always shoot my Milky Way shots with a tungsten white balance. I just prefer the way the blue comes out. It's just a personal preference. There's no right or wrong. But we got a gray day, so we went gray. And we just worked through this process. Good friend of mine, Eric Soderquist. Lots of texture. Shooting at fast shutter speeds. just going out, having fun, being with your friends. I mean, photography is a community. Find other photographers that you enjoy similar things and go out and photograph together because you'll learn a lot. And be willing to take an honest critique from your friends because it'll make you a better photographer. 400, this is with the new 80-400, one of my new favorite travel lenses. And you get this real sense of urgency because you compress everything with that 400 millimeters, but you can still handhold it. So 400 millimeters, it brings it all in, and it gives you that real sense of immediacy. Same lens, shooting from a cliff above, hand holding a 400 millimeter is really cool. Little fashion. And I'm going to end here with a little video piece that I shot for Red Bull that's going to show you another little project that we did, so a little sound. So thank you guys very much for having me.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.